It definitely feels that on the supply side, there's a real lack of projects. It's going to play out very interesting. When the exact moment of it feels like it's breaking as we speak, or better said, the world is realizing that it's breaking as right now, and that will play out. So it's not necessarily just a supply demand. I think everybody is in agreement, or most people are in agreement, that we're going to have a supply side problem, growing demand and not enough supply. When that equates to hitting the commodity and when it equates to hitting the equities is the other question. So
hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Triangle Investor Interviews. I'm your host, Lucian Valkovic, and before I announce my guest, just a quick reminder of a disclaimer. This interview and all my interviews are not a recommendation to buy or sell any shares, products, or services. Always do your due diligence and consult with your financial advisor. Today, we are joined by Ian Harris, President and CEO of Copper Giant Resources, a company with assets in Colombia. Ian, it is great to have you in the show for the first time. A warm welcome to you.
yeah, we've come a long ways from a selfie taken together in London, and here we are together. So I'm really excited today. Very excited to be together.
Same here. We have a lot of things to discuss, especially unpacking the story about your company, Copper Giant. But let's start with copper market dynamics first. Copper prices remain strong in this year, in early 2026, amid supply constraints and energy transition demand. How do you see the supply-demand balance evolving over the next, let's say, 12 to 24 months?
So I'm going to start I'm a mining engineer, so I look heavily at the supply side, right? My job in life, I was born to take deposits and make sure that they become mines. That's kind of my focus. And we've always had a very long narrative in copper that we're just not developing enough new projects. It's taking too long, et cetera, et cetera. But these whole scenes take a very long time period to actually play out, right? And they're very hard to predict, too. It's hard to predict strikes or failures or the ability to when things actually get built or discovery. So all models are functionally flawed in some way, but we know it's going to happen. So that's why I made a little face when you said over the next 12 to 24 months. But it seems to be playing out. But I mean, you get production at Grasberg online a little bit quicker and ramp back up quicker than you think, or another strike happens, which have a tendency to happen, especially when prices are extremely high. It's hard to know when it's going to play out, but it definitely feels like we're at the crux, at a anticipated supply demand issue and something else that's playing out that we've never seen before. You could say one of the reasons for the bear market was globalization. Globalization adds an extreme level of efficiency into supply chains, right? Everything runs to a very tight margin because everybody just looks at their box and they just see what I put into my box will always be there. And I'm just worried about getting things out. How much does it cost to go in? How much does it cost me to work my box? And how much it costs to get in, right? And so we've all become, as a planet, very accustomed to, we just worry about a small sector within a production chain. And there's reasons. It's efficient, right? It reduces overall cost because there's not an excess of capacity. But all of a sudden, we're looking at the breakdown of globalization, and copper is really a standout in this, because whether it's electrification, whether it's new green energy, whether it's AI and data centers, anything that carries electrons normally goes through a copper wire. And so it's so critical, not in just the world economies, but even more so in where the world's economies are going. At the same time, everybody, China, United States announces their strategic stockpiles, what they're going to be doing, and then China announces it. But what about India? What about all these other countries? It's going to be a mad scramble, and you're really decoupling of globalization adds to more inefficiency. But that the benefit of that, who's suffered because of globalization, you could argue, has been, the commodities, right? So now, the start of every major production chain starts at the basic commodity. And so it definitely feels that on the supply side, there's a real lack of projects. It's going to play out very interesting. When the exact moment of it feels like it's breaking as we speak, or better said, the world is realizing that it's breaking as right now, and that will play out. So it's not necessarily just a supply demand. I think everybody is in agreement, or most people are in agreement, that we're going to have a supply side problem, growing demand and not enough supply. When that equates to hitting the commodity, and when it equates to hitting the equities is the other question. So, but it does definitely feel like the world is waking up,
That's a
and
very good point.
right now.
Yeah, very good point. You named some copper challenges here, but what's the biggest one? Is it there is no new discoveries? Is it the grade declines? Can you name one that is the biggest one?
Well, I think it's twofold. First is we've probably had about a 2% growth in copper demand over the many years, very nice and flat. And now that it's changing to at least 3%. But at the opposite side, the bigger problem is, a little bit of history, right? I started in 1997, so I lived through. I remember I worked in the underground coal mines of southeastern Ohio to help pay for school. And I said, upon graduating, where's the sunniest place on planet I can go? And I got into a Sarco's management development program to go work in copper. And man, was I excited. Big open pit, smelters, concentrators, so it's sulfides, oxide, SXEW. It was an amazing place to learn about the copper business. But in 1999, copper hit 59 cents. So we had existing projects. So first, I think 30 or 40% of all the top 20 copper projects in the world are over 100 years old, right? Obviously not at the levels of production, but they started somewhere and they just grew and grew and grew. Grades went down, production went bigger. But during that time, there was a technological change of leaching. So you could leach these oxides and leach even some of the sulfides, and you had this big glut of new production that came online. And then at the same time, in the later 90s and 2000s, they said, you know what, it's easier and less risk to do expansion than to do greenfields. So the number one biggest problem that we have in the copper space is a total lack of investment in new projects.
Yes.
So if you say, and here's the problem, so that the world kind of gets what we're sitting at, is the average time from discovery to production is about 20 years. So even if we fix the permitting problem, that only gets the ones that are already ready, and there's not enough. And I'll put that into some context. But that only solves the last maybe 10 years, but you still got a whole 10 years that you got to go through the engineering, design, drilling, all the things that we have to do that establishes how you raise capital, et cetera. So it's going to be a long time before this problem can really be solved. And I think 6 big copper mines got built over the last 10 years. I was lucky enough to be involved in one. I worked with a director who was involved in another one. There's very few that have happened. And together, I think they added about 250,000 tons of copper a year of new supply. Based on the, I would say, conservative numbers, because every time I look at AI, that number just keeps going bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And we can talk about that too. I think we need 1 million tons, because basically you've taken the existing projects and you've run them to the end. Like, they just can't give anymore. Brownfields is not the solution. You need new projects. Because of the old history that was just basically, the turnip can still give the root can still give a couple more drops of blood, and we squeeze it again and we smash it again. But now there's nothing left. So you need new projects, and we need about 1 million tons a year of new projects. So that means we need 24, at least, big projects just to keep up with what they're doing. And there's not 24 projects. They're
Yeah.
just not there. So even if you, I mean, I look closely at our peers. You need big projects. Those are the ones that actually move the needle. And we probably go deeper into this later, but the Mocoa project that just passed 1 billion tons, I only know of four other projects that are over 1 billion tons near surface that are in the development company, right? So four, right? So it's a big problem.
Yeah. Mocoa is copper-molybdenum project, with molybdenum gaining attention as a U.S. critical mineral for defense and clean tech. How do you view the combined copper-molybdenum opportunity for project economics and investor interest?
Well, as a CEO, my number one job is reducing the cost of capital, and finally, I'm happy that we're doing much better on that side. And really, market likes copper gold, right? They love those. They get all excited about it. But from a true fundamentals, I think we had a little bit of a conversation. Market used to perform fundamentally in the past. Moly has been a critical metal longer than copper has, right, for the United States. And there's some reasons. It is super critical in the highest quality, high temperature steels. Think airplane turbines, right? Also wind turbines, which is really a part of the new demand. But the other problem is I think 80% of all moly comes from copper moly deposits. But as grade has gone down on these deposits, it gets harder and harder because we're at like a 10-to-1 ratio. So if we have 1 pound of, 1 kilo of moly, we have 100 grams of, sorry, if we have 1 kilo of copper, we have 100 grams of moly, and that's extremely high ratio. So on the other projects, it just gets harder and harder to be able to recover that little piece of moly that goes with the project as the grades go down. And then wind turbines have been eating up a whole lot of moly. At the same time, United States, which had Henderson Climax, they're getting to the end of their life. So there's less production coming out of the United States. And so that becomes important. So I've said this a few times, if I was guessing, if there was merger, or if there was an acquisition early, it would probably be more for the moly than it would be for the copper because it's the more pressing need for the big U.S. producers. So it's a critical. I mean, Mocoa is that I know of is the second largest undeveloped moly project in the world. Like it is that big. It is a big moly project that could probably, in senses, supply five at full capacity, which would take a long time, by the way. 5% of the world's moly, more or less. So it's a significant moly project.
Yeah, let's
Actually, do
not.
I have a piece of core?
uh,
Yeah, let me show you some.
Okay.
So this is a piece of core from Mocoa.
Yeah.
And you can see the kind of the goldish looking stuff.
Mhm.
That's chalcopyrite, which is the primary copper ore in the entire world. But this stuff right there, that's molybdenite. So it's the moly sulfide. And so normally when you see a copper moly deposit, this stuff is highly disseminated within. And one of the neat things about Mocoa, it is blebby, it's big. And our metallurgy came back 97% recovery because 97% of the molybdenite is free grade, meaning it's when you crush it and break it up, it's just there, right? So it's a big enough particle size. So we don't talk a lot about the moly because it's a part that people know less, but it has accelerated in price way faster than copper has.
That sounds very exciting. And I have been reading the press release. I believe that was for January 29th. Your essay results from two holes, ND54, ND53, showed grades above the resource model and confirmed porphyry mineralization. How does this result strengthen the geological model and 2026 growth plans? How big is this?
For us internally, it's big, right? Because we passed 1 billion tons. That's a huge number for us, but it's sort of like the majors are, well, what have you done for me lately? right? So a billion, trust me, you rarely see even a PEA, PFS, or feasibility study over a billion tons, and that's like normally a 20-year billion ton is the size. But these majors, they want way more than just a deposit. They want a district play. They want a generational type project. So they like seeing, oh, you got a billion, but you got another five or whatever, or I'm throwing around numbers. So for us, we are this year is about three concepts. One, we're upgrading a part of the deposit. Our goal is like 30 to 50% into the indicated or higher, perhaps from inferred to indicated, and because we'd like to do a PEA. The second is expansion and focusing really on expansion and things that were within the constrained pit that have never been drilled. This is a type of hole that showed the area where the model anticipated X grade, it was higher grade. So that's obviously good news, right? It's basically in the pit that you already said you were going to mine. So it means the potential is the grade could go up in that area. But a bigger one was we really were confirming that the grade continues from an area called La Estrella. So the third thing we really like to do is we have multiple porphyry targets right around the deposit that we've never tested before that we'd like to test, because it's saying we have one Mocoa here, two Mocoas, Mocoa number two there, and then you start seeing the huge potential there. It doesn't mean we have to drill the whole thing out, right? But it shows a pathway long term for the project, and so that's important for us to be able to show, because these porphyries, Mocoa was formed over 10 million years. And I think we have at least 6 different events that happened over those 10 million years. To put it into context, the only areas that we know that have over 10 million years are the Chuquicamata cluster, which is like 3 or 4 different projects, and the Los Bronces, which is Andina, Rio Blanco, which is Andina, Los Bronces. But they're multiple deposits, they're districts. So it would imply that these are like fingers that came into that happened more and more pulses, that they're cluster in style. So there's a chance that you find more than one deposit. Others that maybe know, perhaps Warintza in Ecuador, it has, the list of their port was Warintza, middle, north, east, west, south, southwest. There was a bunch of different porphyry centers that they encountered around the deposit that ended up being individual deposit, sounds small, but really big, right? So really big deposit. So that's a part of showing that for the Mocoa. It's a significant upside, especially for the long term.
Yeah. Ian, you have 2 rigs that are active right now with the potential for a third one. What is the main focus of this 2026 drill program? Conversion, expansion, La Estrella follow-up, and expected meterage?
Ooh, so I might be getting ahead of myself because we're still finalizing, but I think we're within a week of finalizing. But let's just say around 26,000 meters this year. Looking at adding an additional third rig, and the purpose of that third rig is very specific, because the 2 rigs are focused primarily on infill, so conversion from inferred to indicated, and continued expansion. Yes, it's nice to have 1 billion tons, but we'd like to continually be able to demonstrate that this project is growing, and also is engineering. So there will be specific drilling for the metallurgy and geotechnical. Obviously, it might be doing more than one thing at the same time, but our goal is before the end of the year to put out our PEA. And I like basically getting as close to a PFS level material while you're doing your PEA, so you can just continue along. So we want to get way ahead on the metallurgy, way ahead on the geotechnical and the hydrogeological. But the third rig is about testing some of these new targets, right? So as you're moving around the main Mocoa deposit, you have the ability to test such as Estrella. I think Piedra Lisa is another area we'd like to be able to test this year. But we get into that. And that's still just the beginning because that is just around the Mocoa deposit. And we have 135,000 hectares of area that is completely unexplored. Well, of that, 120,000 hectares are very underexplored. So we would also, while it's not specifically in our plan, but looking forward, this is something we also want to do is to be able to show the district potential with this in the zone. In comparison, we're in the Jurassic Porphyry. So if you look at the Andes, which go from Chile all the way north, which is famous for, probably 50% of the world's copper production today, and at times probably 60-70% of the world's production, happen because those Andes mountains are subduction zones, and they happen in various times. So from really a part of Peru through Ecuador and Colombia, that is the Jurassic Belt. That same Jurassic Belt where I used to work in Ecuador had Mirador, Pananza San Carlos, and Warintza, and you could even argue Fruta del Norte, which is an amazing gold deposit, which was to the south of us. So it's a very prolific belt, and in Colombia, it's still very much underexplored.
Yeah, a few things from this. You mentioned unexplored area. When do you plan to attack this area? Is this a plan for this year or the next year?
It is my primary focus today, based on the amount of cash that I have in the bank and the goals I want. It's an idea for
It's
now,
an idea.
right? So
Okay.
I want to make sure
Sure.
this year is about today, based on the money we have and the financing we've done and what we're doing. It's to drill, get the PEA done, get us past elections in Colombia. Lots of major catalysts between now and then, but it is something that we can, as valuation gets up, right, and dilution becomes less of an issue, this project deserves, much more drills turning and a whole lot more work happening.
Sure.
And we're
Sure.
on that pathway, right?
Yeah, you already answered portion of my question. What are the next major de-risking steps you are targeting in this year? So you mentioned PEA. Do you have some timing? Of course, metallurgical work, permitting process. Can you give me some color on that?
Yeah, I'll add catalyst and de-risk together.
Sure.
So the first thing that I'm very excited about is if you see those weekly reports of best copper drill holes in market, but you would have the best drill hole in the world and nobody cared right before. Now people care, right? So Mocoa is consistently within, normally any drill result we put out, even if for us it's not very good, it's still going to be in the top 10. So we probably have a high number of the best hits in the world in 2025, but the market is different. So really, that could be a significant catalyst. The market is finally giving it credit for some of the things we've already done, and we'll continue to have consistent news flow.
Okay.
The next one is there's elections in Colombia in May. So we have May is the presidential first round, June is the second round, and in August, there's the inauguration of a new president. So the current president can't run again. He can only constitutionally run one time. So we're going to see a new president in August. And so that's an important catalyst for the company, and market is perceiving it very positively. The other is obviously new metallurgical test work, even some of the geotechnical, et cetera, but there's no major permitting hurdles for us until we get to the point of actually considering building a mine. Now, we will actually start we've actually started a lot of that baseline work a long time ago to prepare for this, because I think even after PEA, we will actually start the initial steps of permitting. So I don't like waiting. Oh, get the feasibility study down and then wait 2 years to get a permit. Right? It's I call it the long walk across the barren desert. Right? You definitely don't want to be into that period. But the next big one, and a really big one, would be a PEA, which I'd like to get done. Our current goal, not guidance yet, goal would be to get it done in the Q4 of this year. For a very similar reason, we're going to have a new president, right? So I want to make sure I have at least a conceptual project that I can put down on the table with the new president of Colombia. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I mean, this would be very forward looking, right? We got 1 billion tons. We would like to get bigger. So we also have a new resource update that's associated with that PEA. But normally you're seeing companies with a valuation that's somewhere between, on the very low end, I see about a 15% NPV to NAV, but some are up 30%. I actually see some in some of the other commodities 100%. So it's crazy. But that also is a new way of valuating the project and put another line underneath it that this is where the valuation should be. We're up like 400% in 3 months, and we're still extremely undervalued as a project. So it's nice for me. I like saying, okay, where are we valued, and always have this nice pathway of continuing to be able to demonstrate the value of the asset. And so PA puts another line in the sand. Right now it's pounds in the ground, and we're 1 penny per pound in the ground, right? Which is very low. But then it becomes based on the NPV, which is a much more de-risked project. So we're very excited that we're doing well, but we know that we can just continue along that line with the catalyst that we have and the work that we're doing.
Okay, you mentioned that you are undervalued. Do you believe that that undervaluation comes from the jurisdiction you are operating or not?
I get this question way too much, but I'll be honest. I think it's a combination of a couple things. I think the big one would be we got the project moving forward and really started moving when nobody cared, right? So if you look at our comparables, they've normally established their valuation in a much different market, right? So there hasn't been what I call a time of graduation. The other obvious would be it could be overhang because of Colombia over the last years, that there's been a bad perception of Colombia over the last 3 or 4 years. But that's the reason why elections are such an important catalyst for the company. But for me, I really just think there wasn't enough liquidity in the market to be able to create the momentum that changes valuation. Momentum is very important in these styles of markets, is as we're all learning. So it's hard to say, oh yeah, we're worth 1 penny in the ground, we should be 4, if there's no way of actually getting up that hill, right? There's not enough liquidity in market, and people are just basically watching on a day-to-day ups and downs.
Yeah, that's fair
So
enough.
that
Yeah,
seems to be changing, and we obviously have a lot of momentum behind us, so it's very exciting that we could, and that we have a way of us of justifying our valuation, and that there's always a continuous way to show that that will go up.
fair enough. Ian, after closing 12 million financing in January, how does the current shareholder mix, insiders, retail, institution, strategic holders, support the aggressive 2026 program?
So first of all, $12 million sounds great, and obviously having a treasury that allows you to get to significant catalysts is big. But for me internally, one of the reasons we did it was we were going through a cycle of some of these no hold financings where you get a little bit of time and then you come back down, and then finally when all those shares were burned through, you're getting back up, but then you have to finance again, and it was a pretty vicious cycle. So the ability to be able to do a non-brokered financing with a hold period was a big demonstration to market. I've said it before that one of my biggest goals was this is the financing that breaks it and maintains the momentum that we can get past $100 million valuation. Because at $100 million valuation, it's kind of a key threshold
Or pound?
for many of the institutionals. And I said, this is the one that will take us, that the next rounds will be more fund focused. Now, the whole makeup didn't change dramatically, except for that they were long-term shareholders, right? And the big ones were obvious. Frank Giustra before then was buying on market. He's at about 14% right now. I think he's 19.9 on a partially diluted basis. So he's right there at his personal limit. He was buying on market. And remember, well, wouldn't it have been better if he would have done that as a part of a financing? And the truth is, no. The problem is, as we explained, momentum is in getting that valuation, and he saw it. We agreed on it. He put his shoulder behind it, and then on that next placement, he maintained his position, put a $2 million check. I also did 200,000. Unfortunately, I'm not a billionaire, but I try to, I have tried to every single financing. I've also tried to do what I can do personally because I believe so much in the project. So I've got skin in the game at the same as my shareholders. And then some other really key strategic shareholders that are supportive, right? That are there for the long journey, not a more short-term focus. But as we move forward, we now have broken that $100 million mark. That allows us to now go, this is an institutional story. This is what the institutions love. The major issue for us has been our valuation. So we're getting into some exciting times to be able to really say, okay, who else is ready to help? Who else is ready to continue to take this thing and move it forward that can see the value that's going to be created?
Yeah. Frank Giustra is your principal shareholder, and he's the CEO of Fiore Group. I believe people know that. How has this relationship evolved, and what strategic benefits does the Fiore relationship provide to you?
So, for a couple of years now, we've been within the Fiore Group, which is an important group of companies, and just the ability to not be working in a vacuum, right, is very important. You get a lot of conversation where I'm a mining engineer. I've run lots of companies, but my focus is always on the project, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, when Frank came on board and the Fiore Group is like, well, this is a company focus. This is a guy who builds companies, right? And so there's a lot stronger capital markets knowledge, et cetera. And so there's mixes of skill sets that can come to play. But I can tell you on the other side, since about November of last year, it's exciting to see the energy in Frank himself. Like he is very much involved in a positive way, like a very positive way, not just through the buying on market, et cetera, but talking about it. What can we do next? Getting that, and that energy is contagious. It's very contagious. Obviously, the guy's been extremely successful. He's done it many times before. So those conversations are like gold in terms of the knowledge that can come with it and the energy. And he's out there. He's excited. He just did some interviews recently, multiple interviews recently where he's talking about Copper Giant as a part of the things that he's working on. It's been very exciting, right? It's a key compliment. I always say that if you want, and unfortunately, it took me a way to learn because I always thought asset was most important. Right? Oh, like you need a team too. That's important. Oh, there's money and timing, right? So it's the asset is you can't say without an asset, but team to actually knows what they're doing and actually having the experience of taking two of the biggest copper projects and seeing them become mines is huge. And a team on the ground that is amazing. I wish we had the time to talk more about them. The other is sponsorship because it's not always good, and you need that ability to continue moving forward even when markets are not good. But then timing is the last one. It seems like we've got all those four elements right now firing on all cylinders. We have an amazing asset. We have an amazing team. We have that sponsorship with Frank and Fiore Group, and the timing and market. Now it's a part of a more common conversation than ever before.
That's a very good point. Ian, in today's active copper M&A environment, how is Copper Giant approaching potential partnership? How are you approaching M&A?
First, let's talk the two pieces because you talked strategic. You know, let's just call it big mining company because the problem is if I name one, there's not very many of them, so I won't name one. So if you're talking to a big mining company, which the list is pretty short, and they go, hey, I'd like to be your partner. And they're like, okay, I'd like to do 10%. When you're at $100 million, that's only 10 million bucks. And so I know that doesn't sound like, I mean, that's at least it's enough to get a significant amount of your annual budget done, but it's not that big, right? Then the other part is it's almost not big enough for them to care, right? They're like, oh yeah, did we? I don't know if we spent. I think we gave them a couple million bucks. Who cares? I like that other project. So if they abandon you because they didn't have enough skin in the game, market goes, they must hate it, right? So we're not there yet, even I think to be looking at the strategic. I think it's the next step of past, let's get the institutions in, strategics. But the reason we perform so well is getting past 1 billion tons is a critical threshold because it puts you into a tier one threshold where you're talking about significant levels of production, where it makes it significant enough that the biggest are care. I call it the Mr. Miyagi Karate Kid problem. If
Yes.
your copper project is small enough, you're okay. You can build it yourself, right? If you're got a giant, if you get over 1 billion tons, now if you get it far enough, nobody is there like, I'm not letting other big mining company get it before I get it. So right there, it will become a project that they want. And if you're in between squash like grape, right? You're not big enough that they care. Um, and it's way too big that you can't build it, right? You hit that problem. So we are obviously building a project that is specifically looking at this is something people will go, I cannot let this get into the other hands, right? And it's so the 1 billion tons is huge. Near surface is huge. It's got a very high grade core. So that 1.1 billion tons, 190 million tons at a zero point 0.7 cutoff is a 0.94, right? And it's not at the bottom of the project. It's a core through the project. It's near power lines. It's near road. It's near a town of 50,000 people, but nobody lives at the area. It's only at 1,300 meters. It's not in the high Andes mountains. It's not in the middle of a desert, right? It's got a existing port. So it's got so many other added benefits, but now it's also got the scale, and scale is important. And that 10 million number is important. That I repeat a lot because it's indicative of the overall district potential. So it's really, really blossoming. I think it had all the other pieces, but now copper's aligning, Colombia's aligning, the resources now be able to demonstrate itself. And it's one of the reasons it's getting so much attention. And for those, I read the comments, oh, I feel like I missed the party already. I was like, I don't think this is just the beginning of an amazing story as this continues to create value as we advance the project. It's off crutches and now is on a very solid path, right? It's running on all cylinders.
Right. Final question, news flow. What can investors really expect in the short term? I'm talking next 2 months from the company.
So next 2 months, we're going to make public the final details. I gave some rough ideas, but we'll actually have what we're, really behind, probably within the next week or two. We're drilling. I think we have a couple holes that should be coming out. I think we'd have 2 half holes already in. So we're going to have more results. But the nice thing it might be as we look at this Estrella area, mobilizing for that, there'll be some those are all things that will be coming in the next few months. And
Got
then
it. Ian Harris.
April, May, we're only 2 months away too from elections. So that's also going to be a very important for the company.
Ian, I really wish you luck with that. That was Ian Harris, President and CEO of Copper Giant Resources. I look forward that we talk when you will have some fresh news from the company so we can update my viewers and your shareholders. Thank you very much, Ian.
I look forward to spending much more time together.